The year 2018 is officially over. I say as I record this at flipping 11 p.m. on flipping January 29th, but honestly, I have a couple excuses. One, I was actually looking to catch a couple more December releases before I started the list. I hadn't seen Vice or If Beale Street Could Talk yet, and I was really excited for those, so I waited a little bit. I also wound up seeing Mary Poppins Returns with my family, which was an absolute delight, and I've also started my list for 2019, and so far it's looking pretty decent. And two, look, Star Wars The Old Republic is a really fun game, and my brother likes to watch me play it. And if you saw how cute my little brother is, you'd understand why it's hard to say no to him. But anyhow, I have now worked up the courage to tell his sweet little face that I need to take some time away from our game to write this list. So, let's get into the thick of it. Number 10. Mary Poppins Returns. Yeah, I know, it's more of Disney cynically cashing in on the collective childhoods of the audiences that have grown up with them. But honestly, the reason a thing is made doesn't take away from how good a thing is. Emily Blunt makes for a wonderful Mary Poppins. Ben Whishaw is especially great as Michael Banks, a guy who seemed to have a decent position in life, who just got dealt as raw a deal as possible. To paraphrase BoJack Horseman, hey, bad news, your wife is dead. But don't worry, you're about to lose your house too. There's an especially painful scene where Michael's kids have been out and about, having all sorts of crazy adventures with Mary Poppins. And Michael himself has been worried sick about where the heck his kids have been. And he just breaks down, trying and failing not to cry, as he explains to his boys and girl just what a hard time he's having. And on the flip side, there's an especially sweet scene where the kids are all talking about how much they miss their mother, and Mary Poppins sings a lovely little song about how nothing's ever really gone forever, it's just misplaced. And it's guaranteed to rip your heart out. And credit to the child actors here, they're all fantastic. The youngest boy is clearly the one who still feels allowed to be a little kid, while the older son and his sister have felt the need to take on more of an adult role now that dad's alone and without their mom's support. It actually adds to why Mary Poppins is so important here. The younger kids need to learn to mature a little bit, while the older two need to be reminded, hey, you can still be a kid. That's totally okay. To get a little bit personal here, my own 2018 was pretty solid, but it ended on kind of a rough note for me and my family. The movie was everyone's first time at the theater in 2019, and it's exactly what we all needed. So, thank you, Mary Poppins Returns. Number 9. Sorry to bother you. Mary Poppins ends with an old banking executive coming in and telling his successor that his shady business practices have been hurting people and their company's reputation, and for that, he's fired, before telling Michael Banks that his debt is completely forgiven and he needn't worry about his home anymore. I feel like if Boots Riley was in a particular cynical mood, he saw that scene and laughed himself silly. Sorry to Bother You starts as a heightened but all too real look at what you have to do in life to make sure that you and your loved ones remain taken care of. Is your job sucking your soul away? Well, too bad. You need that soul-sucking gig to pay the bills. And then it takes the fantastical turn where it addresses the questions, what if Elon Musk was still a weirdo, but was somehow also sort of charismatic? And also, what if big businesses took their treatment of their employees a step even further? As in, what if they tried to make this whole slave labor and all but name thing a step even closer to slave labor? The whole cast is fantastic as well. After this movie, I can safely say that I stan Lakeith Stanfield. Puns are bad and I should feel bad. 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 Puns are bad and I should... Props to Tessa Thompson as well. Like I said in my Creed 2 vlog, that woman is a national treasure. Protect her at all costs. Armie Hammer kills it here as not Elon Musk, and David Cross as Lakeith's white voice is absolutely hysterical. Well, big recommend. Number 8, Aquaman. Don't worry, a full review is coming later down the line. But to put it as simply as I can, after the complete letdown that was Justice League, it was just so good to have the DCEU back. It felt so good to sit back and watch a DC movie that felt like it was an awesome DC movie made by someone who knew how to make an awesome DC movie. Not a lazy MCU ripoff disguised as a DC movie that was made by someone who didn't even seem to like the movie they were hired to work on. Number 7, Blockers. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I love coming-of-age movies, and this was no exception. This is in a lot of ways just another trashy comedy, as the same dudes behind most of Seth Rogen and James Franco's movies, but it has some genuine heart to it. At first glance, you can see where this premise could go horribly wrong. 3 seniors in high school decide that tonight is the night that they're going to lose their virginities, but their embarrassing parents find out and try to stop them. But the filmmakers actually decide to play this smart. The pretty blonde girl is just out to do it because she really likes the guy she's with and thinks now is the right time to do it. Her mom wants to stop it because her entire life has revolved around her daughter, and if she does this, it's one more sign that her little girl isn't so little anymore. The athletic brunette just figures, it could be fun, so she's in, and her overprotective dad is adamantly against it because this new boyfriend of hers smokes pot and has a man bun. I can't really say I blame him, and the nerdy black-haired girl is pretty sure she doesn't like boys, but wants to be certain that she is gay by experimenting with a guy. And there's also the fact that she thinks her friends are drifting away from her, and she hopes by having this shared experience with her friends, she'll be able to stay friends with them, and her dad tries to stop her because he knows his daughter is gay, and is worried that she might force herself to try to be straight. It's a surprisingly deep movie for a story where Leslie Mann pours beer through a tube down John Cena's butthole. Number 6, Love, Simon. Speaking of being gay, here's a movie about coming to terms with the fact that, well, you like boys. To explain how much I like this movie, I'm going to compare it to Call Me By Your Name. That is a pretty fantastic movie about falling in love with a gorgeous older man in their late 20s in one of the most beautiful cities in the world during the early 1980s. On the flip side, Love, Simon is a contemporary story. It doesn't take place in a peaceful villa in Italy. It takes place in an American high school in the suburbs of Atlanta. If you're a gay teen living in the US, odds are you probably weren't able to see Call Me By Your Name until you were able to rent it. And even then, you might not be able to fully relate to Elio. He's a musical prodigy whose parents are archaeologists. Simon, though, he's a normal, everyday, boring kid in high school. Simon is you. Well, Elio's parents are wonderfully welcoming and encouraging about their son's sexuality. Simon's parents have a more realistic, though still accepting reaction. When Simon finally comes out and says he's gay, his dad's first reaction is to joke that if the girls are so ugly that he feels the need to turn to men. He later apologizes for saying something so stupid and declares that he'll always love Simon because he's his son. And of course, Jennifer Garner plays the mom, so she's automatically the most wonderful person ever. Call Me By Your Name is an exotic romance, and a very good one at that. But Love, Simon is just a coming-of-age movie about becoming who you are. If you're a gay kid, you'll see yourself in Simon, or maybe his acquaintance Ethan. If you're the parent of a gay kid, you'll see yourself in Simon's parents. And I think that's part of why this movie is important. It's an optimistic take on the story of coming out, but it's still a story where you can recognize yourself and other people in these characters. Number 5, Black Klansmen. Every other year, Hollywood treats us to a movie about life in the era of slavery or the civil rights movement. And while some of them are pretty unflinching in both the brutality of the fight for freedom and or equality, and the politics that went into these things, a lot of them ultimately come out with the takeaway, and that's how we defeated racism forever. Smiles and warm feelings all around. Spike Lee looks you dead in the eye with this movie and growls that racism didn't die in the 60s. And then with some pretty graphic footage of the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia from the summer of 2017, Spike hits you over the head with a baseball bat and yells that racism still isn't dead yet, stupid head. Adam Driver's nomination for Best Supporting Actor is well deserved, but it is a crime that John David Washington wasn't nominated for Best Actor as well. And kudos to Topher Grace as David Duke as well. He's the last person you would expect to play a Klansman, which is actually perfect when you realize at first glance, David Duke isn't your stereotypical Klansman either. He is very eloquent. He is not exactly a stereotypical redneck, and yet he was the Grand Wizard of the fucking Ku Klux Klan. Kudos to all the actors. Kudos to Spike for having the balls to do a story about a literal black Klansman, and to make it a mostly serious take. 4. Game Night. Funny story with this one. My mom and I were visiting a family friend out of town the weekend this was out. My mom and her friend decided to drop me and their daughter off at the movies. I figured I could take this girl to see Black Panther, but my app for the theater was for the showtimes in Flint, not the town we were actually in. So we took a minute to see what was out, and we settled on Game Night. And I'll admit, I walked in with pretty low expectations. I figured we were going to watch Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams try their best with the piece of crap script that they were given for 2 hours. And I was going to be wishing the whole time we could have just seen Black Panther. Instead, I found myself utterly dazzled and delighted with the film's humor and the story's twists and turns. Not only is Game Night funny as hell, it's an excellently constructed piece of film. On a side note, like a lot of DCEU fans, I was really disappointed to hear that Rick Fuyama wouldn't be directing The Flash with Ezra Miller as Barry Allen. But I gotta say, if this is what John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein are bringing to the table, mark me down as a solid yes, because Game Night was terrific. Number 3. Don't worry, he won't get far on foot. Another funny story with this one. I was actually looking for You Were Never Really Here on Redbox, but I couldn't remember the actual name of the movie. And all I remembered was it had Joaquin Phoenix as the main character. I was pretty sure when I grabbed it, this wasn't the movie I was looking for, but I grabbed it anyway because I figured, well, Joaquin's always great. It should be decent at worst. And this is pretty far from a decent movie. This is an amazing movie. Joaquin plays an alcoholic who, after a night of bar hopping, got into a car accident and was left completely paralyzed from the neck down for a long time. Depressed, the main character descends further into alcohol abuse, until finally being forced to attend AA, actually, where his sponsor is played by Jesus Christ himself, played by Jonah Hill. And of course, Joaquin eventually manages to sober up and even regain partial use of his limbs, or his arms anyway, leading to him finding a career as a cartoonist for a local newspaper. The movie eventually ends with Joaquin visiting Jack Black, who plays the man he was driving with the night he lost use of most of his body. Joaquin understandably resented the man for a lot of years, but by the time he's come to see Jack, he says he wants to apologize for being angry with him after not knowing what was going on their end. Jack is understandably pretty shocked that Joaquin could even be so gracious, given that he's the one in the wheelchair. And honestly, that's the kind of quality that I want to have as a person. I can often be someone who's just a pushover, because I personally want to be someone who just turns the other cheek. I want to be someone who can forgive others even when they sure as hell don't deserve it. And seeing Joaquin Phoenix be so gracious, it just made me happy. Now, I'll admit, I was kind of checking out of this movie at first, just seeing what was on Facebook or Tumblr or Twitter for maybe like the first 10 or 15 minutes of this movie. But at some point, I finally put my phone down and let the movie wash over me. And boy, am I glad that I did, because this movie is a genuine delight. And now for some honorable mentions. I like to throw all of my affection to Bo Burnham's 8th Grade. Like I said, I love a good coming-of-age movie. I'd also like to send a shout-out to A Simple Favor. This was going to be on my list proper before I saw Mary Poppins. Basically, imagine if Nick and Amy from Gone Girl already had a kid before Amy went MIA, and that Amy and the Emily Ratajkowski character were basically BFFs before she disappeared, and then let your imagination take over from there. I'd also like to acknowledge Colette. It's Keira Knightley as a bisexual woman in the 1910s, who ghostwrites novels for her bastard husband while also having affairs with multiple women. It's even better than it sounds. The entire world sang the praises of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and it pretty much deserved it. But you know what else deserves some love? The Happy Time Murders. Yeah, you heard me. That puppet movie that parodies 70s hard-boiled detective stories. It was hilarious, and I loved it, god damn it. Number 2 and number 1, Bad Times at the El Royale and or Mission Impossible Fallout. These movies were both just too awesome to choose between. So I decided, why choose it all? They're basically dead even in my mind. Fallout is literally the best entry yet in what is, in my opinion, one of the all-time great action franchises. Every set piece is just as exciting as the last. Henry Cavill is an awesome bad guy, and I love that this is the first direct sequel we've had in the franchise's history. We've had 4 other sequels so far, but none of them have really picked up on elements from past films. This movie wraps itself in continuity as if it were a robe that signified its status as royalty. And on the flip side, you have El Royale, which has an incredible breakout performance from Cynthia Erivo, and an equally performance from the one and only Chris Hemsworth as the villain of the film. Hemsworth plays the leader of a cult of fanatically loyal followers, and he's every bit as slimy as he is attractive. Cynthia, on the other hand, plays a struggling soul singer who's either been chewed up and spit back out by the music industry, or decided to leave to go independent after seeing just how many slimy creeps there were. This leads to the best scene of the movie, where Hemsworth finds a piece of blackmail on someone famous, but it's never specified. Cynthia seems pretty disinterested in the whole thing, but Hemsworth presses her to guess who it is. Cynthia assumes, in her words, that it's some man who talks a lot, who thinks that he believes in something, but really he just wants to sleep with whoever he wants to sleep with. When Hemsworth tries to speak again, Cynthia cuts him off and tells him she's heard it all before. And at this point, she's not even mad anymore. She's just bored of men like Hemsworth and the subject of the blackmail. Hemsworth is legitimately left without anything to say after that. Beyond both having their main villains be portrayed by actors best known for playing immortal superheroes with big red capes, these 2 films have pretty much nothing in common. But I don't think I saw 2 movies better from 2018 that were as tight as these 2 were. And no movies left me feeling as wowed as they did. There are days I think El Royale is better than Fallout, and there are days I think Fallout is better than El Royale. So honestly, why choose which one I think it should be when they both deserve it. And that was my list for 2018. Thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you did, check out some of my previous reviews from this past year. I did reviews for Black Panther and Deadpool 2, as well as a few vlogs for Venom and Halloween and Creed 2, plus reviews for some less recent films like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, Blade, HBO's All the Way, Rob Reiner's LBJ, Richard Linklater's Last Flag Flying, the first Creed movie, and Ryan Coogler's Fruitvale Station, as well as reviews for Alan Moore's Watchmen and the video game Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which, funnily enough, I did before Disney announced they were going to do a part 3 for that series. I'll have all of those reviews linked in a playlist down below. Have a great day, everyone. Like and subscribe for more content. Woodstock, out.